Mr. Speaker, anyone listening to that will realise that the honourable gentleman is actually more concerned with political point scoring and process than he is of the substance and the funding of the NHS. The honourable lady shouts at me, but she will want to remember, of course, that the right honourable gentleman welcomed the long-term plan and much of it back in January. It is absolutely clear, and there was evidence in front of the Public Accounts Committee yesterday by the Permanent Secretary and indeed the Chief Executive of the NHS England, that whilst obviously it would be better to publish by the deadline, it is more important that the mandate is right than publish on a particular day. It's more important that we get this document for the long-term strategy of the NHS correct. So therefore, as Simon Stevens, who is the Chief Executive of the NHS, said, is there any problem with this short delay to the mandate? It's an important document, but it is, to be frank, causing him no problems, and it causes no problems. The honourable gentleman mentioned about access to treatment and treatment times. This winter, over 7 million patients have been seen in under 4 hours. That's an increase of nearly 6% in attendances. And I would have hoped, actually, that the front bench opposite might have praised the NHS and the hard-working staff rather than shouting across the dispatch box political points. He mentions that there are no targets. He's, of course, wrong in that. No, he said there are no targets likely to be set for the NHS this year. The accountability framework will include detailed and specific annual deliveries, and they will set out a process for delivering future implementation in detail, as well as some of the early delivery goals for 1920. So the honourable gentleman is wrong to say that the framework that will be set out will not have deliverables attached to it. It will. He also mentioned as well the Green Paper.
Yeah, where is it?
I have said, as he has heard any number of times, we are finalising that. Again, it is more important to get that right. The long-term plan for workforce implementation, a draft plan is being produced, and I expect that plan to be published in the very near future.
The Secretary of State exceeded his time on his feet. He must not now chunter in a borderline delinquent fashion from his seat. Minister. Never too old to behave in a delinquent fashion. Minister.
There are all sorts of lines I could follow that with, Mr. Speaker, but I think it is absolutely clear that it is this side of the House that is putting in the funding to make sure that the NHS can deliver for the patients, the staff and the families.